3 days ago, an Australian company nobody outside Sydney has heard of lost $4 billion in market value in a single day. Its share price fell 39%. Its founder is a retired ear surgeon who tested the prototype on a beach using grass blades and a seashell. And it still owns 60% of the world's market for one of the most complex devices ever surgically implanted into a human skull. This is the story of Cochlear. Cochlear is the kind of company business writers struggle to explain to anyone who isn't a fund manager. It is faceless. It is unfashionable. It is in a category most of its own customers do not know they are about to need. It is also, by almost any metric you choose, the most successful Australian medical technology export of the last 50 years. By the end of this video, you'll know how a Melbourne professor working out of a university lab built the world's first multi-channel cochlear implant, how Cochlear got spun out of a collapsing rubber and tire conglomerate at $2.50 a share, how a manufacturing defect in 2011 should have ended the company, and the one decision Cochlear made next, the decision nobody copies, that locked in a moat the entire global medical device industry has spent 15 years failing to crack. Stick around for that. Or do not. We will not chase you down the street. The story begins in the country New South Wales in the 1930s. Graham Clark, the son of a small-town pharmacist, grows up watching his father strain to hear customers across the counter. Sensorineural hearing loss, the kind that gets steadily worse and that no hearing aid can fully restore. Aged 10, Graham tells his Anglican minister, with the calm seriousness of a child who already knows what he wants to be for tax reasons, that he is going to become an ear doctor. He does. By the late 1960s, Clark is a young ENT surgeon at the University of Melbourne, and he proposes something that the global scientific consensus considers, in technical terminology, ridiculous. A multi-channel electrical implant, a device that would bypass the damaged inner ear entirely, take sound from a microphone, and inject the right pattern of electrical signals directly into the auditory nerve. The cochlea, where this would have to happen, is a fluid-filled spiral the size of a pea, lined with 20,000 microscopic hair cells, and roughly as forgiving of foreign objects as a teenager. In 1973, the United States National Institutes of Health funded the Bilger Report, which concluded, flatly with citations, that cochlear implants would never produce useful speech understanding. Clark went on holiday and tried it anyway. On a beach at Minnamurra, on the New South Wales coast, he sat in the sand, threading blades of grass through the spirals of seashells, trying to figure out how to make a flexible electrode array curve through a cochlea's tightly coiled passages without shredding the soft tissue inside. This is, to be clear, the foundational research moment of an industry now worth over $5 billion a year. A man on a beach with grass. On the 1st of August, 1978, Clark performed a 9-hour surgery at the Royal Victorian Eye and Ear Hospital on a 46-year-old man named Rod Saunders, who had been deafened in a car crash. When they powered on the device for the first time, Saunders heard the opening notes of God Save the Queen. He stood to attention. 7 years later, in October 1985, the United States Food and Drug Administration approved the Nucleus device for sale, the first multi-channel cochlear implant in the world. Cochlear, the company formed in 1981 to commercialize it, was officially in business. The Cochlear that listed on the Australian Stock Exchange in 1995 was, on paper, a tiny success, a few $100 million in revenue, a globally dominant product nobody had ever really competed with. The world's first multi-channel implant in 900 operating theaters in 25 countries. And yet, when the parent company put it up for sale, almost no institutional investor in Australia wanted to buy it. The reason involves Pacific Dunlop. Pacific Dunlop was an Australian conglomerate of the variety that exists in business school case studies as a warning. By the early 1990s, it owned rubber tire factories, latex condoms, telephone cables, Nucleus, the medical device parent that had launched Cochlear, battery manufacturing, frozen pies, and briefly, a clothing brand. By 1995, Pacific Dunlop was sitting on roughly $2.1 billion of debt and decided, in the way these things are decided at 4 in the afternoon, by a board that has run out of options, to sell the businesses it understood least. Cochlear was the first to go. On the 4th of December 1995, Cochlear listed on the ASX at $2.50 a share. Today, even after the worst single-day fall in the company's history, that share is worth $101.60, a 40 times return in 30 years on the orphan asset that nobody wanted. On the 11th of September 2011, Cochlear voluntarily recalled the Nucleus CI500. The CI500 was, at that moment, the company's flagship product and represented 70% of all implant unit sales for the year. 25,000 patients globally had received one. The cause was a manufacturing defect that you do not want to learn about over coffee. Hairline cracks were forming in the hermetic seal around the implant's electronics, allowing moisture to enter the package, short out a diode, and silently kill the device while it sat inside the patient's skull. Cochlear's published failure rate for the device was 4.2%. A peer-reviewed study at one major implant center, published in 2013, measured the actual cumulative hard failure rate at 25%, 6 times the brochure number. The market reaction was instant. The stock fell almost 20% in days. UBS downgraded to sell. Boston Scientific, which now owned a competitor called Advanced Bionics, started running adverts in trade journals that did not mention Cochlear by name, but were, in spirit, mentioning Cochlear by name. What happened next is the part that matters. Cochlear did not fight the surgeons. They did not litigate the failure rate. They did not, in the words of one industry observer, do what an American competitor would have done. They voluntarily funded explant and replaced surgery for every affected patient, globally, at company cost. Hundreds of millions of dollars, out of their own pocket. It looked like financial suicide. It became the single most important strategic decision in the company's history. Running in parallel to the recall, Cochlear was fighting a second war that would have killed a less stubborn company. The opponent was Alfred E. Mann, the American inventor who had founded Pacesetter Systems and Minimed, and who, in the early 1990s, held a portfolio of foundational cochlear implant patents through his eponymous foundation. Mann offered to license these patents to Cochlear. Cochlear declined. Politely, one assumes, but it is hard to be sure. Mann's response was to found a competing company called Advanced Bionics, designed specifically to take Cochlear's market share. Advanced Bionics was acquired by Boston Scientific in 2004, then by the Swiss hearing aid giant Sonova in 2009, accumulating, with each transaction, deeper pockets and a more aggressive legal strategy. In 2007, the Mann Foundation sued Cochlear for patent infringement. The case dragged on for 7 years. In 2014, a United States jury found Cochlear had willfully infringed and awarded Mann $131 million in damages. Willfully is a specific word in patent law. It is the difference between a fender bender and a hit and run, expressed as legal vocabulary. Cochlear appealed. The case ground on. The legal bills by 2015 were estimated to have exceeded the original damages award. The aftermath inside Cochlear was a permanent change in posture. From 2011 onwards, the company began plowing roughly 12% of revenue into research and development, the highest such ratio of any major medical device company on Earth. The lesson the leadership had taken to heart was simple: never again be the company that had to copy somebody else's patent. Today, Cochlear ships approximately 5,000 implants per week from a single facility on the campus of Macquarie University in Sydney. 60% of the global cochlear implant market, 180 countries, 2.34 billion Australian dollars in revenue last financial year. Three things lock in the moat. None of them are the product. First, the surgeon training network. Every implanting surgeon on the planet, and there are not many of them, has been trained on nucleus tooling, the instruments, the drill paths, the intraoperative neural response monitoring, the post-op programming software. A surgeon switching to Sonova or Med-EL is, in effect, learning a new surgical specialty. They will not do it for an incrementally cheaper implant. They will not do it at all. Second, lifetime servicing. A patient implanted with a nucleus device in 1985 can today walk into a cochlear clinic and receive a new sound processor that connects by Bluetooth to 40-year-old electrodes still buried in their skull. Switching brand does not mean buying a new earpiece. It means undergoing a second skull surgery to remove the original implant. Patients generally decline. Third, manufacturing density. The Macquarie facility integrates research and development, clean room production, and global logistics in one building. Engineers walk 20 meters from the prototype lab to the production line. Sonova has roughly 4 times Cochlear's research and development budget. They have not been able to take share for 15 straight years. This is the third decision. Build a thing that, once installed, requires a second surgery to leave. Train the people who install it so thoroughly that they will not. Service the thing for the rest of the patient's natural life. None of these are the product. They are the operations around the product. And operations, as the previous episode of this channel established at considerable length, is the moat. In 2025, Cochlear launched the Nucleus Nexus system, the world's first cochlear implant with on-device memory and machine learning sound classification. The implant itself, sitting inside the skull, can now recognize the difference between a noisy restaurant and a quiet conversation and adjust its filtering on the fly. The Nucleus 8 processor that pairs with it runs Cochlear's Smart Sound IQ2 software with what the company calls Scan 2, an 11% improvement in classification accuracy in noisy environments over the previous generation. It is, by every benchmark in the industry, the most advanced cochlear implant ever shipped. 3 days ago, Cochlear cut its full-year profit guidance by roughly 30%. The shares fell 39% in a single trading day, the worst single-day decline in the company's history, on the same exchange where the orphan asset listed at $250 30 years ago. Approximately $4 billion of market capitalization evaporated by lunchtime. Brisbane time. The drivers in roughly descending order: weak United States developed market implant volume since January, $10 million in canceled orders out of the Middle East, gross margin compression on the new Nexa system, restructuring charges, and a strong Australian dollar, none of which sound individually fatal. But the question every investor was asking by close of business was the same question cochlear surgeons asked in 2011. Is this the moment competitors can finally take share? The answer, on the available evidence, is the same as it was in 2011. The moat is the operations. The operations are still in Sydney. The surgeons are still trained on nucleus. The patients still have devices in their skulls that take a second surgery to leave. Sonova, with the bigger R&D budget, will sell more hearing aids this quarter. They will not sell more cochlear implants. The moat does not particularly care what the share price did on Tuesday. 3 decisions. Build a thing that requires a second surgery to leave. Train the people who install it. Pay for every failure out of your own pocket. Two of those are obvious. The third one, the one that looked like financial suicide in 2011, is the one that turned a Sydney University spin-out into a $5 billion global market's 60% shareholder, and is the reason Tuesday's share price crash, however brutal, almost certainly does not change the long-term picture. If this is the kind of breakdown you want more of, about the companies that quietly dominate categories most people never think about, subscribe. Next episode, that Melbourne logistics company we promised last week that moves more freight than Australia Post. Thank you for watching.